They say the British complain about the weather at least 3 times a day. Personally, I consider that an underestimation bordering on slander. I complain about the weather the way other people hydrate, constantly, instinctively, and with a faint sense of moral duty. It's one of my finely honed talents, practically a calling. Too hot, too cold, too windy, not windy enough. The drizzle is rude, the cloud cover is smug, the frost feels judgmental. Some people complain recreationally. I complain as if the climate owes me money. Until last Tuesday, I assumed this was harmless, a personality quirk, a coping mechanism, a British pastime with strong instincts for survival and sarcasm. I only realized the weather had developed a personal vendetta against me the morning my umbrella tried to bite me. The umbrella revolt. To be clear, it wasn't a mouth or anything. My umbrella, a device whose sole purpose is loyalty in adversity, snapped shut on my fingers like it had been hired to assassinate me. I yelped and dropped it. A gust of wind immediately rolled it away down the pavement with the vindictive enthusiasm of something that had finally handed in its notice. I glared upward. "Oh, so that's your mood today," I said. A sunbeam appeared briefly to spotlight the discarded umbrella like a fallen soldier in a crime drama. The sky, in my professional opinion, was smirking. The fog with abandonment issues. At first, I assumed it was normal fog, the ordinary kind that mists around a field like it's auditioning for a period drama. But no, this fog had intentions. It didn't float around generally. It didn't drift vaguely. It followed me. A tight 3-foot-wide clump of fog stuck directly behind my shoulder, like an anxious intern afraid to ask where the toilets are. I walked faster. It drifted faster. I stopped. It bumped gently into my back, then hovered there apologetically. "I don't do clingy weather," I informed it. It oozed closer. "I mean it," I hissed. "I can't even handle clingy people, or even people in the near vicinity." The fog quivered with what could only be described as hurt feelings. By the time I reached Tesco Express, the fog had developed what I can only describe as an attachment style. It pressed itself against the automatic doors, trying to seep in. The sensor lights flickered in confusion as the fog repeatedly slammed its non-existent face against the glass. "Stay," I told it firmly. "You do not need a meal deal." It pulsed sadly. Inside, the manager eyed me suspiciously. "Is that with you?" she asked, nodding at the fog plastered to the glass like it was auditioning to be my emotional support moisture. "It is not," I said loudly enough for the fog to hear. The fog sagged against the pane. When I left the shop, it perked right up, swirling adoringly around my ankles like a weather-based pet with boundary issues. "For the last time," I said, stepping away, "I'm not your mother." It followed anyway. A low rumble rolled across the sky, the kind of exasperated parental sigh clouds make when weather systems adopt a mortal without approval. "Don't look at me," I snapped upward. "You made it emotional." The fog wrapped around my calf in a clingy, damp hug. Fantastic! I had accidentally imprinted on precipitation. Hail, but make it personal. The hail arrived mid-week, as if the weather had realized emotional intimidation alone was not enough. Not normal hail, not polite spherical hail, spiky daggers of death hail. Tiny frozen weapons hammered my hood, my shoulders, my patience. "Really," I shouted up at the clouds, "this feels aggressive." One perfect little ice arrow bounced off my temple, landed in my palm, and slowly melted down my lifeline like it was underlining a point. "Why do you hate me?" I whispered. Another hailstone hit me square in the back of the head, which I took as an answer. The sunshine that wouldn't leave me alone. Sunshine normally avoids me, and I, having the complexion of a Victorian ghost who died of something poetic, have always respected the distance. But that day, it trailed after me. A single golden spotlight illuminating me and only me, across the pavement, the bus stop, the bakery aisle, offensive, the dentist's waiting room. illegal in at least 3 moral frameworks. A toddler pointed and said, "Mummy, that person's glowing." The sunbeam brightened proudly. I stepped left, the light stepped left. I ducked under a tree, it bent itself round the branches like a determined torch. "Oh, pick a personality," I snapped. "Either ignore me or stalk me, but you can't do both in 1 week." The beam warmed my face in what could only be interpreted as smug. The final straw. The next afternoon, I was mugged. I wish that were an exaggeration. I had just purchased a glorious, steaming carton of chips, golden, salted, perfect, the kind of chips that make you briefly believe in higher powers. I lifted the first one, just one, and that's when the gust hit. A sudden, deliberate blast from underneath, executed with the precision of a weather system that had trained for this moment. My arm jerked. The tray flipped, gracefully, insultingly gracefully, a perfect double somersault with a smug little twist at the end. The airborne chips began to fall. A hush fell over the pigeons, the kind usually reserved for royal weddings or bread sightings. All 17 pigeons inhaled sharply, in unison. Then they descended. It was carnage. Wings flapped, feathers flew. 2 pigeons body-slammed each other mid-air in a fight for a single chip. One particularly round pigeon executed what could only be described as a tactical combat roll to reach a fallen wedge. Another perched triumphantly on my shoe, clutching a chip like a trophy, staring me dead in the eye as if to say, "I am victorious, and you let it happen." I watched, helpless, chipless, betrayed. "Why?" I whispered at the sky. A second gust slapped me across the face with the force of a wet towel. Because it was funny, it seemed. Something inside me cracked. That was uncalled for, absolutely uncalled for. They were mine, they were hot, they were a symbol of hope. Thunder rumbled, the kind of rumble someone makes when they're trying very hard not to laugh. "Oh, go on then, enjoy yourself, ruin something else while you're at it." The clouds churned with mischief. The wind looped around me like a bully who'd found a new hobby. Below, the pigeons continued their feeding frenzy. One strutted past with 2 chips in its beak, like a tiny gangster carrying cigars. Another attempted to fly away but was simply too full, ascending a tragic 6 inches before giving up entirely. A third waddled onto my fallen carton, sat on it, and claimed it as property. The wind rustled through my coat in what can only be described as applause. I stood there, soaked, starving, surrounded by triumphant pigeons and divine mockery. It was unquestionably the final straw. By the time I got back to my flat, I was furious and emotionally bereaved over fried potatoes, which is why when a single raindrop fell directly on my forehead as I unlocked my front door, I snapped. Personal rain cloud hovering, of course. "That's it," I shouted, dropping my keys. "What do you want from me?" The rain stopped. The lights flickered. The wind held its breath. And then, with the terrible inevitability of a printer deciding to jam during a deadline, a voice spoke behind me. "Enough," said the voice. The man under my porch light looked like he'd lost an argument with both the wind and a filing cabinet. His suit was damp, his hair was damp, his expression was the dampest thing about him, the kind that suggested he'd hit the end of his patience around Stonehenge was installed. He flashed a badge, Weather Operations, Divine Division, God Level, Junior. He sighed as if I'd personally contributed to his downfall. "Right," he said, "which one of your little critiques pushed me over the edge?" "My what?" He snapped open a dripping folder. "You complain constantly," he said, "and normally I let it go. Truly I do. I'm a tolerant deity. I once handled an entire century of sailors shouting slurs at headwinds." He flipped a page dramatically. "But you are relentless." He jabbed a finger at the soggy dossier. "Tuesday, this drizzle feels personal. Wednesday, who approved this wind? Thursday morning, if the sun could stop being smug for 10 minutes. He mimicked my voice, poorly. I sputtered. I didn't mean it literally.
"Oh, I know," he snapped, "but the other gods don't." He slammed the folder shut so hard a tiny thunderclap went off. "Do you know what it's like for me?" he demanded. No. "Of course you don't," he said, pacing in a small furious circle. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be the weather god? Do you?" I shook my head. "It's humiliating," he hissed. "Everyone else gets something glamorous. War, love, death, fate. Meanwhile, I get moisture distribution." Behind him, a small cloud drooped sympathetically. "The war god stops by my office once a millennium just to laugh," he said bitterly. "The love goddess calls me Mr. Drippy. The agricultural gods only speak to me when they want favors, and don't get me started on the sea god, smug tidal bastard." He leaned in. "So when you spend your entire mortal existence criticizing my work, do you know what that sounds like?" I shook my head again. "Like confirmation," he said grimly. "Confirmation that I am bad at my job." I never said,